I was completely taken aback when my husband, Jonathan, suddenly suggested that I should move back to my parents' house, despite the fact that they were already living with us. His abrupt declaration left me stunned, yet he seemed to believe he was being entirely rational. With a cold and detached expression, he bluntly asked, "Do you have a problem with that? Don't argue with me. If you do, I'm fine with divorcing you." His recent behavior had been distant and indifferent, but this was the harshest he had ever been. I had my own frustrations and grievances, and in quiet moments, I had even considered the possibility of divorce myself. However, hearing him say it so casually, as if it meant nothing, filled me with an unexpected sense of hurt. After all, wasn't I the one paying $3,200 a month to cover our expenses? Did he even acknowledge or appreciate that? As I stood frozen, struggling to process his words, he grew more agitated. His voice sharpened as he demanded, "Leave this house now. My parents won't feel comfortable with you here." I stared at him, searching for some logic in his reasoning, but I found none. Why did I have to leave? This was our home, a space we had built together. Yet, something inside me told me that arguing with him would be pointless. So, suppressing the emotions threatening to spill over, I responded, "Okay, then I'll take all my belongings with me." The moment I agreed, he seemed satisfied, as if he had won some sort of battle. Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in disbelief. Determined to act quickly, I immediately contacted a store to arrange for the sale of my things. "My name is Betty, and I've been married to Jonathan, who is 3 years older than me. We met through mutual friends, and what began as a casual introduction turned into an entire day spent together." He shared his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, and I was captivated by his deep, resonant voice. I had always been drawn to soothing tones, and his voice had an undeniable charm. From that first meeting, the attraction was mutual. We exchanged numbers, made plans to meet again, and before we knew it, we were in a relationship. There was no formal discussion about it, it simply happened, unfolding naturally. At the time, I had just graduated from college and was embarking on my career. Dating someone with more life experience was exhilarating. My best friend, Laura, voiced concerns about our age difference, but I brushed them aside. 3 years isn't a big deal, I had assured her. Jonathan made me feel special, and that was all that mattered. Eventually, Laura trusted my judgment and supported our relationship. Jonathan and I had been together for 2 years when he brought up marriage. By then, I had already introduced him to my parents, and they were hopeful about our future together. I often wondered when he would propose, and when he finally did, it was in his typical, laid-back manner, during a casual visit to my apartment. We were simply lounging on the couch, enjoying each other's company, when he turned to me and said, "Hey, want to get married?" There was no grand gesture, no ring, just Jonathan being Jonathan, but that was his style, and I was okay with it. Smiling, I replied, "Sure, let's get married." Perhaps we both approached the commitment with too much nonchalance. Following the proposal, we visited each other's families. Meeting Jonathan's parents was an eye-opening experience. Their home was filled with decor that seemed to mimic old-fashioned luxury, but something about it felt artificial. His parents were adorned with flashy jewelry, their expensive clothing screaming of an attempt to display affluence. It became clear that our backgrounds and values were quite different. More than that, I had a nagging feeling that I wouldn't get along with his family. My suspicions were confirmed when Jonathan's mother made a disparaging remark about my appearance. I was taken aback by her bluntness, but I reminded myself that I was marrying Jonathan, not his family. As our wedding day approached, I reassured myself that it didn't matter if I wasn't fond of his parents, I wouldn't have to see them often. With that thought, I chose not to dwell on it. After our wedding, Jonathan and I settled into our new condo. At first, everything seemed fine, but I soon noticed something odd. He seemed distracted, as though his mind was elsewhere. Then, one day, he asked an unexpected question. "Hey, who was that woman in the blue dress at our wedding?" he asked, out of nowhere. I frowned, trying to recall. Which woman in a blue dress? There were quite a few. "The one who gave a speech as your best friend," he clarified. "Oh, you mean Laura?" I said, realization dawning. "Yeah, that's her," he responded, but there was something off about his tone. "What about Laura?" I asked, puzzled. He hesitated before saying, "Oh, it's nothing. I just thought I saw someone who looked like her on my way to work the other day, and it reminded me of her speech at our wedding." His explanation didn't sit right with me. Why would he randomly bring up Laura? But before I could press further, he laughed it off and disappeared into his room. Shortly after, Laura called me, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Betty, guess what? My boyfriend's coming back to Canada next year," she announced. Laura had been in a long-distance relationship for years, staying connected despite the miles between them. I admired her unwavering commitment and always enjoyed hearing about their love story. "That's amazing. Do you think he'll propose when he gets back?" I teased. Laura laughed. "Oh, Betty, you always jump to conclusions. Just promise me you'll be at my wedding when the time comes." "Of course, and I'll give another heartfelt speech, just like you did for me." We giggled, sipping our tea, comforted by our deep friendship. But as my friendship with Laura remained strong, my relationship with Jonathan became increasingly strained. He started working late more often, returning home at odd hours. When I asked about it, he snapped, "What, do you think I shouldn't work?" Even though he was still pursuing his dream of becoming a voiceover artist, all his income went into his training, leaving me to cover all our expenses. "Haven't you been working too much lately? They shouldn't be making you do so much overtime," I said one day. "I told you, I'm fine. More money is always better. Just keep your opinions to yourself," he shot back. He had grown cold, even refusing to use my name when addressing me. His drinking had increased, and his once gentle voice had become rough and hoarse. He barely acknowledged my presence anymore, choosing silence over conversation. Amidst this, Laura called, saying she needed to talk to me about something important. We decided to meet at a cafe, and she specifically chose a booth with a clear view of the entrance and counter. Curious, I asked, "Did you pick this spot on purpose?" I watched as Laura cautiously approached, her eyes scanning the area before settling into the seat across from me. Her hesitancy was palpable, and I couldn't ignore the concern etched across her face. "Yes," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to sit somewhere the staff could see us, just in case someone suspicious was lurking outside." "A suspicious person?" I repeated, my mind quickly connecting the pieces. "Is this related to what you wanted to talk about?" Laura nodded, her fingers anxiously tracing the rim of her coffee cup. She confided in me, revealing a gnawing fear that had plagued her for the past month. Ever since she left her previous job, she had felt as if someone was following her. It wasn't just paranoia. On multiple occasions, she had caught glimpses of a shadowy presence in her periphery, only for the figure to disappear before she could get a clear look. Even on her days off, the unsettling sensation of being watched never faded. The reason she had chosen a table with a clear view of the entrance was deliberate. She suspected that her stalker might try to eavesdrop on our conversation. "Have you reported this to the police?" I asked, my concern deepening. "I tried," she sighed, "but since there's been no direct confrontation, there's not much they can do." "What about your boyfriend? He's coming back next month, isn't he?" I inquired, hoping she had some additional support. "I wanted to discuss it with him, too, but you're here now. I needed to talk to someone close by first." I understood her urgency. Laura had been too frightened to even determine whether her stalker was a man or a woman. The lack of a clear identity made the situation all the more unnerving. Seeing how distressed she was, I resolved to keep an eye on her, watching discreetly to try and uncover the person shadowing her. At the same time, I was grappling with my own issues, namely, my deteriorating relationship with Jonathan. I had been reluctant to open up about my struggles, but as I observed Laura's stalker more closely, my entire world was upended. The person following her, the one who had filled her days with fear, was none other than my husband, Jonathan. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but the more I watched, the clearer the truth became. Jonathan, who frequently claimed he was working late, was often spotted loitering near Laura's workplace. He would follow her at a distance, never approaching, just observing with a disturbing intensity. One evening, I saw him trailing behind her with an unsettling grin, a sight that sent shivers down my spine. The man I had married, the person I once loved, was now a stranger to me. My affection for him, once unwavering, turned cold in an instant. I knew I had to act quickly. Laura needed to get away. I urged her to relocate immediately, and with the help of her colleagues, she arranged for a discreet exit. A trusted friend drove her straight from her workplace's underground parking lot to her new residence, ensuring that Jonathan wouldn't be able to track her movements. As Laura vanished from his sight, Jonathan's frustration boiled over. One evening, he confronted me abruptly. My parents are going to move in. You need to go back to your parents' house. I stared at him, momentarily stunned by the audacity of his demand. Excuse me? If you have a problem with that, then we can get a divorce, he spat, his temper flaring. I had considered divorce before, but hearing him toss it out so casually ignited something in me. Did he really think he could just push me aside? I had been the one covering our expenses, $3,200 every month, to be precise. Did he even remember that? I gave him a skeptical look, but he doubled down. Just leave already. My parents can't move, and if you're still here, why should I have to go? Fine, if he wanted me gone, I'd take everything I had paid for with me. The next day, I contacted a buyback service. When they arrived at our apartment, Jonathan initially smirked, believing I was simply packing my belongings. That smirk vanished when he realized what was truly happening. The workers appraised everything: furniture, appliances, all the essentials of our shared life, everything except for the few items in Jonathan's personal space. The total value is $299,000, one of the workers informed me. I signed without hesitation. Sell it all. Jonathan finally snapped back to reality, grabbing my arm. Why are you selling everything? My parents need this furniture. I yanked my arm free. Oh, you mean the furniture I paid for, the rent I covered, the expenses I handled while you spent your money on acting classes? I folded my arms. I feel deceived, Jonathan, but that's not my problem anymore. He turned pale as the weight of the situation hit him. Then, in typical fashion, he tried to salvage his pride. You think money will make me cancel the divorce? Please, I've already gotten close to a rich woman. He struck an absurd pose, as if that would soften the blow of his words. I scoffed. He must have been referring to Laura. His delusions knew no bounds. Jonathan had no idea that Laura came from a wealthy family, nor did he realize that she had been in a committed relationship for years. He saw wealth and latched onto it, assuming it made someone a better partner, but Laura wasn't interested in him, and she never would be. She's been feeling uneasy lately, I told him coldly. You know why? Because she has a stalker. His face fell as he realized I knew. I was just walking her home, he protested. You're lucky I didn't call the police. Jonathan floundered, desperately trying to justify himself. I didn't know she had a boyfriend. He's been away. She picked me over someone she doesn't even know. I shook my head. They've been writing letters since they were kids. They talk almost every day. Unlike you, her boyfriend actually has a stable job. Her father approves of him. The truth sank in, and for the first time, Jonathan looked truly defeated. As the last of our belongings were carried away, he muttered, I guess you're all I've got now. You'll still support my dream of becoming a voice artist, won't you? I met his eyes with an icy stare. Sorry, I've already started the divorce process. From now on, we communicate through lawyers. Jonathan panicked, trying to cling to our past. Haven't we been getting along? Getting along? I echoed. Ever since you realized Laura was wealthy, you started trailing her. Right after our wedding, you were already looking elsewhere. Tears welled up in his eyes. His weeping only made him seem smaller to me, childish, pitiful. Enough, I said firmly. I've informed your uncle about the divorce. He has plans for you to start working for him. That means I won't be supporting you anymore. With that, I walked away, never once looking back. For now, I would stay with my parents, though I considered moving closer to my workplace soon. Meanwhile, Jonathan's future played out exactly as expected. His uncle put him to work, and his parents, who had once hoped to live comfortably off their son's marriage, found themselves in the same boat. It seemed manipulation ran in their family. As for me, I finally felt free. And in a satisfying turn of fate, after settling everything, Laura invited me to her wedding. I met her long-term boyfriend, a man truly worthy of her. I wished them every happiness, and knew that, finally, I had reclaimed my own.